everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we're here to talk about episode 7 of A Journey Through Another World, Raising Kids While Adventuring. This was another really fun sea-themed episode, and I actually really love this episode because there are several things that I have at least slightly critiqued in previous episodes of the show that they went back to and they partially used, but that in my opinion they got more right here, at least for this particular story. To begin with, let's talk about the time that Takumi and the twins spend with the merpeople, because that was continued and it was quite enjoyable. We find out that the priestess isn't actually like the head major person that is in charge of the merfolk, but rather that they have a leader who is more of an actual like community leader and stuff. And we get a couple different rewards for the stuff that we did in the last episode where we moved the ship and everything. And it's really funny because initially Takumi is very careful and very reluctant to take a reward from these guys because he doesn't really feel that he worked very hard. I also kind of wonder, given the way that at one point they're actually kind of referencing some darker mer mythologies that he is thinking of from his own time, potentially reading or studying this at home. Maybe he didn't really want to take a reward from them too easily or too eagerly, because in many mythologies the mer can be very dangerous. So I really like how they were able to tie in this potential darker undertone without actually trying to pull it to the front of the story, where they wouldn't have, as far as I can tell, had any motive or promise of using it, at least not that we really saw. I do find it funny the things that did happen though, because the reward that we get from the mer ultimately ends up being pearls and some other useful items, and the mer actually refer to this as their garbage, but of course from Takumi and the twins' point of view, either for Takumi he recognizes that these items are incredibly valuable and useful, or in the twins' case they just think that the pearls are really shiny, and it was just obviously wholesome and cute seeing them check those out. The other much more useful and actually really interesting and fun thing that we got as a reward from the mer people is that we actually got lessons on using water magic. And we learned a bit more about this world's magic system insofar as how magic works, that it's either a magic that you are taking something and manipulating it, or that it's a magic where you are using your power to actively create the thing that you are going to use. The idea that you can have either essentially manipulation or conjuration magic, and that it depends on what is available to you as opposed to being formalized separate schools, was really interesting in my opinion as someone who's read or watched a lot of fantasy, and it was fun watching Takumi and the twins actually learn how to control this. And of course, as with anything they touch, Alan and Elena ended up being naturals at this. It makes sense because later in the episode we do get confirmation for certain, instead of just in theory, that these are children of the water god, so it makes sense that they had a natural affinity for learning water magic and that it came so natural to them. I do still feel, at least slightly, that there are warning signs about how actively and eagerly we are able to see them succeed, and more so how much other people end up seeing that, and the fact that there might be somebody who gets some foul idea at some point or something could be a concern down the road. But I'm not going to worry too much about it because this show is more so about being wholesome and cute, and when it does its darker moments, a lot of times, in my opinion, is actually when it's not at its strongest, because it usually can't carry them through. But we'll talk about a situation where we saw at least the correct tinges of that, which we saw 3 times, the first being the one I talked about a few minutes ago, with the storytelling and the recollection on Takumi's part. But I think that they definitely got better at that in this episode, and we'll definitely be talking about why. The next thing that I want to touch on is the way that Syl behaves when people are interacting with Takumi. Syl feels some kind of personal responsibility or almost possessiveness from what I can tell, and that's gonna be interesting, or it could eventually end up being trouble. I felt really bad for the Oracle who went and got Takumi and the kids to help with the mer people, because Syl just absolutely lost his shit on her, and it was like, my guy, what are you doing? I mean, the only reason that Takumi is in this situation to begin with is because of Syl's own incompetence. So to see him taking it out on someone else, to me, was just kinda super lame. And I get that he feels some form of responsibility and protectiveness toward Takumi, and that he obviously has awareness of who the children are. But I really didn't like seeing him in this light. He definitely, at least temporarily, lost a few brownie points with me here, because, like, there was no need for him to go off on this girl. I mean, she had the right idea and good intentions, and nothing bad happened, and Takumi and the twins ended up getting rewarded with valuable things. We'll have to see how this goes. This could have just been Syl feeling responsible for the mistakes that he made and lashing that out at somebody else, which isn't a good look, but which is at least human in origin. Or it could be something that leads to something darker and more meaningful. We'll have to see. But either way, I think it was something worth noting. The last thing we need to talk about, and the thing where they definitely get an aspect of storytelling I've seen them struggle with in the past right, is the introduction and the interactions with the new Leviathan friend, Kaiser. I super like Kaiser. I think that he's very interesting. I think that he makes an absolutely fantastic addition, and for once, he's not just some random pet that Takumi has been given by somebody who can go into his shadow and sort of just chill. And I think it's really interesting that this ancient, super powerful water being, who is supposed to be looking after the twins, actually approaches them. And I love how they introduce him, because they don't just introduce him as a teddy bear, they actually initially make it seem like he's going to be menacing. And I'm thinking, oh boy, we've seen this before. And the thing is, in this circumstance, they get it right, because instead of trying to use it as some kind of cliffhanger, where they've made some really, like, potentially menacing underlying thing and then instantly resolve it in the next episode, they actually let this interaction resolve itself. And then they turn around, having brought my guard back down and having set me up to be interested in and like this character, and they had him pull the rug out from under me again, and it looked for a few minutes like he was going to take the twins, and I'm just like, oh my god, no! No, leave them alone. They don't want to go with you, because they totally didn't. And then he actually shows us that he was testing the twins and Takumi to see what their actual bond was, which is brilliant and makes sense, and somebody should have done this at some point, so it's really great to see someone having done something like that to make sure that the twins actually legitimately want to be with him, because while we as the viewer can tell that that is the case, outside sources might be hypothetically concerned, especially outside sources that were already theoretically responsible for the safety of these children to begin with. So that was definitely something. It's really interesting that he had Takumi form a contract with him, and I love the fact that he makes it abundantly clear to Takumi that this isn't some kind of, like, slave contract or something, and that he gets to decide what he wants to do, and that he is an active participant in this, that this is not like a human with a pet dog or something. I really thought it was interesting just seeing how the whole thing worked out, and getting to see the kids and Takumi take a ride on this super badass sea serpent or Leviathan was just icing on the cake, and I just thought that was absolutely precious. Overall, this was a really good episode. It definitely fit with the mood and themes of this show, and it definitely expanded the roster without doing anything that made things too confusing or hard to follow. And it also left us with some potential paths that the story could take going forward. But those are just my thoughts on this week's episode. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking, so drop a comment below and let me know. And I'll talk to you in the next video. See you later. Bye!